This is the Ricoh GRiii, a humble little point-and-shoot camera. Or is it? Maybe not. I needed to know, so I borrowed one for a couple of weeks, and in this video, I'll share with you what I've learned, what I like and don't like. I'll also show you how I set it up for street photography and for just everyday life sort of stuff. I'll compare it to some more familiar cameras, and I'll share what I think the successor to this camera needs to be successful in 2025. Also, just for clarity, this video is not in any way sponsored by Ricoh. I did borrow this press loaner unit from Ricoh Poland, but they have no editorial input, they have no say in what I say, I have no financial relationship with them. I just wanted to try it. But if you do want to support what I do, you can go to shop.huntercreatesthings.com, there's a link below, and buy a shirt. So first, let's quickly recap what the hell this camera is. After all, this camera came out in 2019. What a year. Now in the last 2 weeks, sorry, what? 6 years, cameras and technology have come quite a long way. But on specs alone, I think the little Ricoh actually holds its own quite well. It's got an APS-C sized 24 megapixel sensor, paired very nicely with this, the 18.3mm lens, which is both extremely sharp and a 28mm full frame equivalent. Now, there are, of course, a few other specifications about this camera that are quite interesting, especially when it comes to focus, but we'll get to that a little later. For now, why now, in 2025, did I want to try one of these things out? Well, for one, the Ricoh GRiii has what can only really be described as a cult following. I mean, GR people love this camera and they won't stop talking about it. Lots of my street photographer friends swear by this camera, and there are plenty of photographers online whose work I admire who love these too. Ricoh GRiii, for example, or Jason Hunter, who, by the way, should really answer my emails about legally swapping names for a week. I also wanted to see how shooting with such a tiny little camera like this would make me feel, how it changed the photos I took. I mean, I'm used to this tank. Guitarists know that different guitars make you play different kinds of music and inspire you in a different way, and well, I think it's the same with cameras and lenses. So, for 2 weeks, this was the camera I took everywhere, every day. Now, before we get to street photography, which is very interesting, this camera blew me away in a completely different area. But before that, I want to take a minute to tell you about my favorite way to look at new photography right now, Frames magazine, who have very kindly sponsored this video. Frames is a quarterly print magazine where in each issue they showcase work from a handful of photographers across a massive range of genres. It's printed gorgeously, and it really lets you take your time with each photo instead of trying to shovel ads or articles about the latest greatest lenses down your throat. But the cool thing is, it's not just the magazine that you get. My favorite thing about Frames is how they've built up this community around the magazine. Not only is there a great app, there are events and live streams and talks from some amazing photographers and more. See, Frames magazine is more than just a nice artsy magazine for your side table. It's a real investment in your photography journey. It's an amazing source of inspiration, and it's reasonably priced, especially if you get 10% off by using the code HYDRATED10. There's a link in the description below, and it's definitely worth checking out. Thank you, Frames. One of the things I was really hoping to get out of the Ricoh GRiii was kind of a visual notebook. Just a great way to document things and leave myself little visual notes on a daily basis. And yeah, it's kind of perfect for that. By now, you know I love 28mm, but it is literally perfect for this sort of thing. It's wide enough to take pictures of things in your hands, stuff like that. I used to carry around like a little pocket notebook, but I'm a very visual person, like I feel like most photographers probably are, so I end up using this way more than I ever used those little notebooks. Aha, you're saying? Why don't you just use your phone, you silly sausage? Well, because I don't want to. This is more fun, and I actually try to leave my phone at home as much as possible these days. I like going for a walk when no one can contact me, it's really refreshing. However, this little camera happens to share one of the big advantages of a smartphone, and it's a much bigger deal than I thought it would be. It can do this. That's right, it actually fits in my pockets. That's one thing my Nikon definitely can't do, and what it means is that I do take this thing absolutely everywhere. And not only do I take it everywhere, I actually use it everywhere. I mean, how many times have you packed your camera to go and do something and then not taken basically any photos because you don't want to look like a complete muppet using a DSLR in a restaurant? Yeah, okay, maybe that one's just me, but the fact is, this is way more socially acceptable to use anywhere than this. I usually don't care about looking like the camera guy, but some of my camera shy friends definitely do, and with this, it's like there's nothing there at all. And that means not only do I end up with the occasional lucky fart, but also I end up with more photos of the dog and my girlfriend and places I have lunch, and that is kind of important. If we're honest, I don't think any of us want our family photo albums to just be street photography. When I'm not out doing street photography or trying to be artsy-fartsy, and instead I'm doing life stuff like this performative feminist literature reading session, believe it or not, I leave this camera in P mode for program auto. If you also partake in performative feminist literature reading sessions and you're into cameras, then you'll definitely enjoy liking this video and subscribing to the channel so that you can see when I make more of them. If there is something specific I'm after, it's easy to twiddle my exposure around with the twiddler, which isn't a dial, it's a twiddler, which was weird at first, but now I accept it for what it is. And I just use it like a point and shoot. It's pretty clever. It, generally speaking, gets it right, and that means that I don't have to withdraw socially and fiddle with the settings. And to me, that's really the crux of it. That's why I started taking photos in the first place, to document my life. Although back then, not every YouTuber had used that as their video title, so I didn't call it that. I called it being scared shitless that I would forget my entire life, which, now that I'm saying it out loud, makes me think I might need to go back to therapy. Speaking of therapy, and no, this isn't a BetterHelp segue, walking around in the city and taking photos is about as healing and cathartic as it gets without breaking any traffic laws. So let's talk about how the Ricoh GRiii handled street photography. Here's some photos I shot over the last few weeks, edited and seasoned to taste, and I actually found it quite interesting how I worked differently with the GRiii. For starters, looking at the world through a screen instead of a viewfinder definitely makes me take photos differently. I feel like I was definitely looking for geometry more and exploring the edges of the frame, but it did take some adjustment. I also found that the RAWs were quite different to what I'd usually get from a Nikon. Not bad, but just different. They're more contrasty, and there's definitely a Ricoh look, and it's definitely a modern look, so I did find myself having to add a little bit more grit and grain and bloom and stuff like that into the images to sort of de-digital them compared to what I'm used to on the Nikon. That is where you've cleverly mentioned that I should try the Ricoh GRiii HDF, the one with the built-in diffusion filter. I'm one step ahead of you. One of the coolest things about the Ricoh GRiii is how much aftermarket support there is for it. I mean, you can really customize your camera to how you shoot. Square Hood were kind enough to send over this, square hood. I really just wanted to try it for the style points, but I've realized it actually makes it a lot easier to hold the camera for long periods of time because it gives me a place to hook the back of my fingers onto. Thank you, Square Hood, by the way, that was really kind of you. This one has clear glass in the front, but they do one with a diffusion filter in it also. I didn't want to commit that hard to the diffusion look, so I also picked up this filter adapter from Nisi. You know what's coming, don't you? The cone of shame, and believe it or not, it just barely doesn't vignette on this lens. I had a lot of fun playing around with my Moment Cinebloom filter on here, as well as my 85B orange filter, just for fun. I think I would actually keep this Nisi adapter in my bag if I was going to use this camera for anything more deliberate than just snapshots. What can I say? I guess I'm a filter guy now. No more fixing it in post. And now that I've experienced that, I definitely do see the point of the HDF models now. This lens is super sharp and it takes diffusion really nicely. I thought I would use the ND filter all the time, but I'd never used it once, so I think I would go with the HDF model if I was buying my own. If you're curious, there's links to all of these little bits and bobs in the video description so you can have a look at what I've been using. One thing that I didn't try that I would definitely have to get if I decide to get my own GR camera is a wrist strap. The one that comes with it is fine, but this camera is so small and light that I can really easily imagine dropping it if somebody bumped into me in the city, and so I would try to shop around for something that I could kind of handcuff onto my wrist and make it so that it's not droppable. And speaking of the city, let's talk about street photography, finally, shall we? Street photography on the GR3, what can I say? This little camera shines. For street, I actually did mess with my settings quite a lot. No P mode here, only M for master photographer. One of the most useful and impressive features that this camera has, that any camera I've ever tried has, is snap focus. The way I've set it up here is that there's no autofocus. I switched it off, and whenever I press the shutter, it only uses the snap focus distance. It's always focused to 2.5 meters or about 8 feet. And that is so I can use zone focusing, which is better and faster in my use case than autofocus. And we'll talk about that a bit more later. One thing that I really love and that's really, really cool is that if I press the function button on the back, it actually shows the zone that you have available in focus in green on a little distance scale, which is really useful and a great visual aid when you're just learning how zone focusing works. And aside from just settings, because of the size, shape, and look of this camera, when you're out taking pictures, you instantly just look like a tourist, which means you can get shots you never would with a big DSLR. When I was in London, nobody would notice if I stuck a big DSLR up their nose, because it's just more chaotic like that. But here in Warsaw, it's less popular, and I found that a smaller, less obtrusive camera package tends to attract a lot less attention, and it makes me feel a lot more confident on the street. Speaking of that big chunky DSLR, one of the things that the Ricoh really changed for me was angles. It's effortless to poke this round a corner or hold it up high and shoot down, so I found myself getting way more creative with how I framed up my shots. Shooting like that with the Nikon is a fast track to a rotator cuff injury. And now I do miss the optical viewfinder from the DSLR, but you can get little clip-on viewfinders that go in the hot shoe and just turn the LCD off, which is something I'd like to experiment with. So I think it's fairly obvious now that I'm a fan of this camera, but it's not perfect, and as always, I do have a few complaints. For one, I really wish there was a way to lock down the controls. I think I have pretty normal sized man hands despite my petite and elegant frame, but even then I still found myself, when I'm holding the camera, accidentally changing the exposure compensation, scrolling this wheel around, and often having to reset back to what I really wanted when I wanted to take a picture. I've also noticed the auto white balance isn't perfect. Obviously, I'm shooting RAW files, so that's not really an issue, but it is something I found myself having to go into the RAWs and tweak a lot more often than usual. Maybe it's just this particular unit, I'm not sure. Now, the two complaints that everyone seems to have about this camera are battery life and reliability. Now, obviously, I've only had this loaner unit for 2 weeks, so I can't really comment on reliability, but the fact that it's covered in all these dents and scrapes from being used like a rental car would be, and hasn't given me any problems, is mildly confidence-inspiring. One thing I can comment on is the battery life. If I was going to go out and do a full day of street photography with this, I would definitely want at least one spare battery in my pocket. Or maybe a power bank, because you can juice it up via USB-C, maybe while you're having lunch or whatever. But the thing is, this is an old camera now, and I think we're all expecting that Ricoh will follow it up with a new model, hopefully this year. I don't know anything you don't, because Ricoh wouldn't tell me, but it does change the way we look at this camera. Instead of a list of complaints, we now have a wish list for its successor. Number one is mildly controversial and unlikely, but I really want the pop-up flashback from the old models. I love using on-camera flash for snapshot style photos and taking pictures of my friends in the pub, and I think it'd be a really great addition. More realistically though, I think we can all agree it would be great to get a GR4 that has all of the latest and greatest tech we've developed over the last 5 or 6 years. Autofocus has come a really long way in the last 5 years, and so have batteries, and I think it would be silly not to improve those. Now, I think one thing that this camera really doesn't need to do, like at all, is video. I never use the video. I never would use a camera like this For video, that's just not what the strong suit of a tiny compact camera is. In my opinion, I don't think that that's where Ricoh should focus for the successor to this camera. Instead, what I would like to see is either a really big bump in the build quality, the materials make it feel really premium, or keep it very similar and drop the price by a lot. I get it, it's a pretty niche camera for a small audience, but on release, and still today, it's a pricey camera. It's just under $1,000. Maybe you disagree with me, but having used some compact 1-inch sensor cameras, I don't think that just having an APS-C sensor is going to be enough to differentiate a GR4 in the new market we're in now. But my biggest wish for the Ricoh GR4, I really want a monochrome sensor option. I would buy it instantly. I love shooting black and white, and this lens paired with a super efficient sensor would be absolutely killer. And Ricoh already have APS-C monochrome sensors in their Pentax models, and so I just really hope that they do one. So what's my take on the Ricoh GR3 in 2025? What's the verdict? Well, Steve Jobs said he wanted the computer to be a bicycle for our minds, and to me, the Ricoh GR3 is like a bicycle for my eyeballs. It's so quick, it's so easy to use, it's so easy to take everywhere, and so it's not just a great camera that can take great photos, it's a camera that encourages me to take more photos and to play and have fun. And I think that is where it really shines. And making it fun means it's easier to get better, because the #1 way to get better at photography is to take more photos. Do you know what also pays off instantly and constantly amazes me is zone focusing, where you can literally be faster than autofocus on any camera, and I'll teach you how to do it on any camera here. Stay hydrated and create art.